All right, David, we met through job creations, economic development at the local governments. So creating jobs is our work. And CSR used to be the word, which is public relations word for the corporations. Now you're saying corporations, even in Japan, are becoming serious about really participating in public goods. And many are even posting SDGs as their goal for their business operations, which help us to start thinking our ways. I learned from Pedro of the new interpretation of PPP as people, planet, and prosperity. And I wrote some small article in Japanese that without prosperity, private sector cannot participate. The profitability. So, yeah, sustainability is the way we should go. But without profitability, we cannot achieve our goals. But it is easily said, but hard to do. But the Pedro, I have this question. SDGs consist of 17 goals to help this world and mainly poor people around the world. Goal 17 happened to talk about partnerships. And I interpret this as use public-private partnership to try to achieve above 16 goals of SDGs. Is it time, or I'm not too naive to say this is the chance, but is it time that we should start thinking partnership, PPP, private participation, CSR, SEGs, all these provide us a chance to promote more PPPs in anti-UN work or goals of these SDGs. Jeffrey at the United Nations has to come into this picture to say PPP may not be just a branch, but do you think we have to promote more of the private participation for the achievement of SDGs?
Sam, I like to say that, and I defend that's actually the name of my thesis, that we have a new game, and the new game is sustainable development. The new game is to align people, planet, and prosperity, is to align the economic dimension with the social dimension and the environmental dimension. But the concept is very beautiful, but it's very hard to implement. And so I like to say that the first 15 goals, they are about the three dimensions: the economic, social, and environmental dimension. And then to implement the game, we need rules. And the rules of the game is goals 16: peace, justice, and strong institutions. So we have a new game, and we have new rules to play this game, because the game itself is already complex. And then I would say that we need new players to play the game. And the new players to play the game are the partnerships. Because indeed, the most beautiful thing of the SDGs is the recognition from the United Nations that the member states, they need the cities, the nations themselves, they cannot implement and achieve the SDGs without the mayors, and they cannot implement and achieve the SDGs without the civil society, the NGOs, and the private sector participation. And therefore, the players of the game are essential. And I like to say that what we have in front of us and what COVID-19 brought to us, because David is recognized by all of us as Mr. Resilience, and Japan is recognized by every member state as the resilience country. But I would say that COVID-19 is a resilience humankind momentum. And for this reason, COVID-19, I like to say that COVID-19, obviously, it's a drama, but at the same time, it's really pushing us all to make us realize that we have to cooperate. Because, Sam, I think we have to use this cooperation, and I think somehow Europe is trying to get something and improving. The States are having their challenges. Japan is, as you mentioned, doing better than most of us. But coming from Africa, and I was born in Angola, I always keep thinking about the African countries and South America and Southeast Asia. And it's really we have to fix things among ourselves, but then we also have to think about everybody else. And so I really think, Sam, that the SDGs gave us a push for us to realize how important is cooperation among ourselves, but also to look into all these other countries that unfortunately do not have the rules of the game as trained, as organized as we do, and we have to come there with these new rules and with new players. And so it's really I would say, I like to say that it's not just a public-private partnership, but it really is a global partnership where we all have to stick together.
Okay, thank you. David, Pedro talked about resiliency. You woke up on this word several years back. And this disasters and pandemics, SARS, MARS, Spanish flu was 100 years ago. SARS, MARS was just 15 years ago. But this pandemic is happening more often. In Tokyo, in Japan, typhoons, earthquakes are happening more often than before. Do you sense the humans really have to start paying attention to resiliency that is so important for Japan, for Asia, with earthquakes and tsunamis and so on, in the pandemics? If another pandemic happens in the next couple of years, we are dead. How do you see your study of resiliency needing in our society into the future?
Well, and I think this is happening, Sam, because of this combination of pandemic and we had the swine flu. We have had in the past 20 years more pandemics or potential pandemics than we've had since the Spanish flu in 1917. And so we know that there are going to be more of those. And I tell people that natural disasters could care less about COVID-19. Just because we are under this pandemic and that's front of mind as it should be for everyone, doesn't mean that disasters have not stopped. And in fact, this year in the United States, we had a record number of we call them hurricanes. The rest of the world calls them typhoons. Or so anyway, the wildfires that are engulfing both California and Australia, Europe country has been affected, Sam, and now because of climate change. Atlantic hurricanes are coming up into England, and probably, Pedro, you're not far off from being affected by what previously was simply not a factor. Who would have ever thought a hurricane would hit the United Kingdom? But it has twice in the past 3 years. So all of this is pointing toward one thing. The people on this planet have to become more resilient. They have to adapt resilient practices. And for public-private partnerships, this is especially acute because if resilience is not built into whatever it is, whether it's a road or a healthcare facility or anything in between, and these new types of public-private partnerships, if they don't have resilience built into them, Sam, and sustainability and resilience are interconnected. You can't have one without the other. So building in a more sustainable way, building in a more resilient way is the only way to, as our friend David Baxter says, future-proof these investments. And going back to the people first concept, you know, there are 5 outcomes, and we've all been intimately involved with this, and Pedro especially. But those 5 outcomes, 4 of those are what you would think when you think about, you know, social and environmental and stakeholder participation, transparency, inclusion, sustainability, and resilience. But what's the 5th one? The 5th one is viability. And so that can't go away. You can't, as you were saying, Sam, you can't have any of the other things if it's not still financially viable, because that is and even impact investors, their profit is not their number one goal, but they have to have a return on their investment to keep doing those investments. So all of this must work together. And sustainability and resilience, you know, at one point that was basically taken out of People First documents. And there was such an uproar because of that they were, those 2 terms were put back in, especially resilience. So obviously I have a biased view because that's what I do and that's what my center does, but it's just a fact that if we don't build in that accounting for the future and accounting for what could happen in the future, then we're going to have some really, really challenging outcomes from PPP.